Today, I just wanted to share with you some books I got from the library for this research that I've been doing for like a year for my book, which is Ethnic Targeting and Labeling in America. It's a very, I guess, it's a book that touches various angles and history and people and just how ethnic targeting is being applied, how labeling is being applied, and for that I'm going into a lot of ancient American uh, just history and stuff like that. So the first book I got is Who Were the Navajo Code Talkers? Today I got so apparently during World War II, there were some, I guess, skills that the government needed, and they turned to the Navajo to help them out with that. So I'm going to see what that's about. And then another thing is, where is Chichen Itza? Obviously, very ancient, and again, I've been looking into ancient stuff and just discovering the Americas and what it is beyond the corporate stuff and all the stuff that pop culture has been teaching us. Another book. I'm not sure if I got this before because I know I got a book on Christopher Columbus, but this one also. Where do you think you're going, Christopher Columbus? Is part of my book, which is about Christopher Columbus. He going into just the Americas and um, how how he got here, where did he land, and different things about him specifically. This one I got North American Indian, which is specifically about red people in North America. I know those other two books I just showed were kind of related to South America, but this one is specifically North America. And there's a little bit of wildlife I put on this book that I'm, you know, eventually going to publish. The Natural World, North America. And this one is just some research that I want to do to get some info on American environment, American beauty, American, natural like fruits or animals or things that are just like native to North America. And this other one are All Our Relatives. This is more like a story, but I'm sure I can get something out of it. And, for the book that I'm doing. And the pictures, I also like to somewhat like draw and get an idea of what the drawing was back then. And I don't know if any of these drawings were done actually by them and they're just copied onto these books, or they are imaginations of the illustrator. So I still haven't been able to figure that out. And then going back to the South, Puerto Rico specifically, I got a book which talks about invaders and all this like Spanish culture that was enforced throughout South America, and really what I'm trying to figure out and differentiate, when I study these is to out whatever is native and introduce that in my book. So, for example, the stuff I talk about so far, and there is what is Spanish, what is native. So, like, we see so many foods. Well, which one is native, which one is imported from Spain? So, like, the paella is imported from Spain. It has nothing to do with American or Native American culture, even though it could be eaten in Mexico and Puerto Rico and all these countries in South America. Um, However, the fact that there's pepper and chili pepper and all these different, like, very spicy, goods used in the foods from South America does go back to that native ritual of adding spice to food. So that is actually Native American and it's not imported from Spain. Just stuff like that I want to kind of differentiate, because we don't want to be, celebrating a foreign culture. We want to be celebrating a native culture. And when we talk about, America or just countries in this part of the continent, we want to talk about the stuff that was always here and wasn't imported. And so that's like one thing I talk about in my book. Other things I talk about, of course, are the Black Americans, how they contributed, how they were, like, I guess, started living when slavery ended. Well, it wasn't just about slavery ending and, la la la, everyone's going to their perfect life. Some people had to be forced into this African colony by the name of Liberia. I'm sure you guys know, made up of former slaves who didn't really want to go back to Africa, but were, funded by this specific organization that wanted to send these people over there, and they're influenced a lot by American ideas and the so-called democracy we have here and stuff like that. So um, that's one thing I talk about. For the yellow people, yellow Americans, I don't talk too much except for the fact that, like, for example, there's one thing, there's no such thing as Middle East. We keep hearing this term, Middle Eastern person, Middle Eastern food. If you look on a map, there is no such place located with such a name. So that term was made up by Alfred Taylor, a British person who just wanted to make up political boundaries, somehow divide the cultures of India and Arabia, and so he came up with this term. But there is no, like, geography called Middle East. That's important to know. And then the white Americans, of course, they're everywhere in history. But I just talk about, the white man and how much, like, he's been, like, I guess, turned into something like a side note in today's environment in America. Of course, we don't have, that masculinity going on anymore. We don't have that, we have absent fathers, we have the prison industry, all these things affecting men, and, it's not that it's just the rise of women, but it's also the things that make men weak and, basically lose that prestige or whatever they once had. And other things I talk about in my book is, like I said, the history of. Oh, hi. Thank you. Yes, we have Clarissa here. Thank you. We have history, which tries to introduce, again, the culture of America. The culture of America is not, I don't know, Mariah Carey. It's not, I don't know, like Chevy or McDonald's, like these companies and all these, like, famous people. Hi, we have Shay here. Hello. Yeah, so the people outside of America think that this stuff represents American culture, and they say like, oh, we have American cars in our country too, and that's so cool. Like you guys have big cars. Well, yeah, that's our industry, but there's more to us than that. It's not just about companies and what they're building, and um, that's not the only thing that represents culture, really. I mean, when you talk about, for example, Egypt, would you be talking about their car industry, or would you be talking about the pyramids? So we need something like that going on over here. Like, we need to be talking about like artifacts we have. We need to be talking about our nature. We need to be talking about influential people, not just people who dance on stage and make billions of dollars, and then adopt all these foreign kids and say we're not all about our money. We need, to talk about like Neil Armstrong. We need to talk about Martin Luther King, and these people represent American culture. So the book, I mean, it's not done yet. I'm just, going over it every day and adding some parts, editing. Um, Hi, Tom. Yes, we have some people here, some number ones. Um, yeah, so, um, other parts to the book obviously has pictures. There's, for example, the Muscovy duck, which I kind of figured out as a turkey duck, but then I found it has nothing to do with a turkey. It's just a duck. Um, and so, like, that's just like something that's part of American nature. So, like, there's a picture of that. There's a picture of um, Simon Bolivar, which is very popular in South America. He basically cut off Spanish hands from South America and is a very important figure in Bolivia, Venezuela, and all these countries because even though he was, a white man, he decided to liberate these countries and somehow bring back the native culture. Simon Bolivar, he was the person who fought against the Spanish and basically, kicked out the Spanish from South America. So I have a little bit about him in the book, which we don't really talk about in America. We just talk about George Washington. Because, I mean, it seems like every country has, like, a father, like the Turks have Ataturk, or India has Gandhi. So, for South America, that would be Simon Bolivar. In America, we keep saying George Washington because he was the first president. I'm not sure. I mean, some people, I think there needs to be like a little more research on people during his time who were maybe a little more, freedom loving, a little more just working for the people, a little more open minded, and so I mean, I think there are better people out there who lived during the time of George Washington. Um, and Other things I talk about in the book is this whole labeling thing that we come up with labels every day. Someone is Chinese, someone is Jamaican. Oh, hi, yes, we have Melissa here. Hello. Yes. Someone is, I don't know, like Canadian, whatever, and these labels coming out every day, and people choosing to identify with them because they don't have anything else to identify with, and this constant need to identify with something. How can we satisfy that? So, instead of using all these labels, one way to satisfy that belonging is by looking back at American history and culture and trying to identify with what we have here instead of what is imported. Irish people are still called Irish. Um, Italian people, all these ethnic groups are taking over identities, and basically it's going beyond race. It's something that's going beyond race and appearance. We have Spanish. Well, Spanish is someone from Spain. So why are people who are actually Native American being called Spanish? Just because they speak Spanish? Well, I mean, I think we need to look at books like this then to be able to differentiate. Because there's so many labels, and people want to identify with something. Yeah, in Australia, people are called Australian. I mean, that's it. That's what they are, and that's the name of the country. So, in America, I think we need to do something like that. Just call people American. Just call them by their nationality, and it's fine if they're a different race, and it's fine if they have like a foreign parent or whatever. But as long as someone is like speaking English or grew up here, or has some kind of attachment to this land, it's safe to call them American. We don't need to go to these other labels. And so that's another thing in my book that I talk about, ethnic targeting and labeling. And then obviously the government forms we deal with over here. I'm not sure about government forms in Australia, but here we have like Asian, we have African is still on there, we have the Alaskan, and then we have the Hawaiian, and all these like different categories that kind of, and of course the other, which I don't know how many people check off other and what other actually means. There's so many different things that is confusing, like like what am I, and there's new labels coming out every day. So I think we need to bring some kind of like togetherness and a sense of like there is something we have in common. Yes, we look different, but I mean, it's the same thing in Brazil, it's the same thing in South Africa. They have people looking different, but they're still called, as this person said here, South African or Brazilian, or America is not the only country that has this very diverse group. There are white people in Brazil, there are black people in Brazil, and they all speak Portuguese. They all identify with the same culture, and they too have that history of slavery, and but they don't have this divide that we have. And I think it's important to, I guess, put out a book out there on this, that we have a divide, because it's turning into something that's going beyond appearance. We're asking people where they are born. We're asking people where their parents are born. I mean, like, getting very deep into some deep information that's unnecessary. Race used to just be about appearance. What does the person look like? Now it's about what language they speak, where were they born, how did they obtain citizenship, are they naturalized? It's getting to these specifics that are unnecessary and just damaging, really. For someone who, acts and talks American, and, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to ask those questions. And so basically that's the book that I'm trying to publish, get the funds for. And yeah, so if you have any comments on this subject, anything you want me to put in the book, you can email me. My email is LaylaGlobal80@gmail.com. Thank you.